So that's opened and closed classes. We're going to focus on open class today. We'll do closed class. We won't dedicate a class to it because this is a quick workshop, but we'll talk about the closed classes as we come across them in the class. All right, so we've already done a bit of this work with the closed classes. We did this exercise last time where you were able to see how they can shift function, where a noun can become a verb, etc. But we can also identify them by their inflections. With the adverbs, you noticed right off the bat, the ly makes something an adverb, and that's a general rule. 99% of the time that works. With nouns, we can pluralize it. With verbs, we can make it past tense. These all have to do with their inflectional or derivational endings. This al ending is a very common adjective ending. So we're going to look for those as we go across this as well, because sometimes you'll have a verbal idea that you want to make into a noun, and you might not have ever heard a word like this be a noun before. We're going to give you the tools to make that a noun so that you can comfortably and confidently do that. So let's start with nouns. My definition of a noun is a little broader than what they teach us in 3rd grade, which is person, place, or thing. My definition of a noun is any word which can be singular or plural. It can be made possessive as well. A verb, an adjective, a pronoun, none of these words can be made possessive. They can't own anything. And it can also be used together with a determiner. Is determiner a new word for you in grammar?
It's no. The same in Spanish, and the classification we do to open and close, and concrete, abstract, and proper too.
Perfect. Okay, then this is not going to be a surprise to you. Then a determiner is going to be giving us the context of the noun. How does it function in the discourse, not necessarily the sentence itself. All right, so just an example, cat and cats, that pluralizes. That's a simple test for us to see it's a noun. Its forms, we've got singular, we've got plural, we can make it possessive, both in its singular and its plural, and a proper noun is capitalized. Just some basic English grammar there. Now, this is where things get a little more hairy. This is my formula for a noun phrase. The noun phrase is centered around its head noun. This is going to be the controller or the king of this phrase. Everything else in the phrase is going to be based off of this. Today, we're going to focus just on the noun phrase where we put the determiner, the adjective, and the head noun. Later on, we're going to add participial phrases, prepositional phrases, and relative clauses. So for now, a noun phrase equals at least a determiner and a head noun. If we add an adjective, it normally goes in between the determiner and head noun. So the head noun is the main idea or the content of this phrase. If I add a verb to it, that verb has to agree with the head noun. The other words in the phrase will restrict the meaning of the noun. What I mean by restrict is they're chiseling away at it, making it smaller. That should be a familiar concept with you in Spanish as well. So just a quick fun example here. We've got dog, but this can mean any kind of dog out there. So I can restrict it. It's a big dog. I restrict it a bit more. It's a big brown dog. Finally, if I add in my determiner, I know that it's not just a big brown dog, but I have a specific one in mind. This is the function of and the, which brings us to our conversation then on determiners. There are 4 kinds of determiners in English. There are articles, demonstratives, possessives, and quantifiers. Sometimes these are confused with adjectives in English, but their function is not like other adjectives, so we like to keep them in their own category. This determiner is like brackets in computer coding. If you have any experience with computer code, in order to start a new code, we need to open with a bracket and we need to close with a bracket. Well, here we don't need to close with a bracket, but anytime you see a determiner, a noun phrase is going to follow. So you can look for its head noun. You know it's going to be a noun phrase if you see any of these words. The trick is Some of them, like this, that, these, and those, can function themselves as a pronoun. Exactly. All right, so then let's take a look at this paragraph. I've underlined all of our determiners. Can you read this paragraph for me?
See, last night, a big brown dog showed up at my house. The dog looked lost. I gave it some food and a place to sleep. The next day, another dog was on my doorstep. This dog must have heard there was a food and a warm bed here.
The before food, I don't know how that got in there. That's not supposed to be there. All right, so notice we've got our indefinite article This is going to open up a new topic for us. When I use that means we are not yet on the same page about what we're talking about. I'm grabbing your attention and saying, here, I've got a new topic. Let's talk about this. After that, I'm going to use other determiners like the or this to indicate that this is the same topic that we're already talking about. Let's look at what happens if we mix up these determiners. First, let me ask you, for each of these determiners, if you can indicate its head noun. So let's start with Remember, is like a big street sign that says, here comes a noun. Which noun is the partner with this determiner?
Dog.
Dog, good. How about my?
House.
House. The?
Dog.
Dog.
Place.
Good. The?
Day.
Day, good. Another?
Dog.
Good. My?
Doorstep.
Doorstep. This?
Dog.
Good. This is not supposed to be there. This
Bed.
Bed. Good. So you can notice sometimes there's words in between them, sometimes there's words after them, but still before the verb. But and the noun function together as a unit. So now let's mix those up. Can you read this paragraph for me?
Last night, the big dog showed up at a house. Every dog looked lost. I gave it some food and any place to sleep. This next day, one dog was on his doorstep. A dog must have heard there was food and the warm bed here.
Right. So this paragraph actually makes us more confused than anything else, right? We open the paragraph with the. Last night, the big brown dog. What big brown dog? At this point, we don't know this topic. This is supposed to be a new topic. We need to use to bring in this new subject. And he showed up to a house. Well, now what house? Is it my house, your house, whose house? So our determiners are going to indicate the context of the noun. If I don't use the proper determiner to indicate my intent, the reader is going to be completely confused about what I mean. Okay, the determiner functions together with the noun similarly to how tense functions together with a verb. It's going to be the closest relation to that word as possible. In fact, I look at tense and the base verb as two separate things that come together, just like the determiner and the content coming together to create a context. So looking up here to swim, without any sort of vowels or determiners, this is just the idea of swimming. It's not telling me anything specific about it. It could almost be said that this is an abstract noun. It's impossible to have a concrete noun without a determiner because the determiner brings it down to earth into our context. A noun without an article is called an anarthrous noun. Anarthrous just means no article. Articular means with an article. So those are the adjectives that we can use to talk about with or without a determiner. And again, without it, it's just the idea of swimming. But if I add in a determiner here, now it means sorry, one unspecified swim. Hang on 1 second.
No, it's okay. Try a little more.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. All right, so indicates our new topic. And then
Yeah.
anytime I use the with that noun, it's going to tell me that I'm referring back to the same one. Now I want to switch my the to this or to that when my new topic is too far away from the repeated subject.
Yeah.
So if I've gone 2 or 3 sentences away, I don't want to say the swim, I want to say that swim, because now it's not connected with that subject. It's too far away. And you can see that's the same thing with verbs that just swim. It's called a base verb. It's just the verbal idea of swimming. It doesn't actually have any content. However, when I make it present tense, well, now I have some sort of a context for this swim. I know when it happens. If I make it a present tense third person, I even know how many people are doing it. It's just one person doing it. If I say swam, that's in past tense. Now I know that it is completed action. So these determiners and tense give us context. All right, so 2 notes on noun phrases. A proper noun like Maria, New York, or Cheshire Cat, these will not have an article. They'll have no determiners. This is because you can consider its capitalization, its capital letter, functions like its determiner. So if you wanted to strip these into 2 pieces, what is the determiner and what is the head noun? The head noun for Maria would be the idea of Maria in lowercase. And when it's made a proper noun, now it's capitalized Maria. That's its determiner, is the capital M. A determiner will always open a new phrase. So look for the head noun. A determiner can't be in the middle of a noun phrase. It has to come at the beginning. All right, verbs. Verbs only have 2 tenses, but it is the tense that makes it a verb. A verb is any word which can have tense. Tense is the aspect of time, not necessarily the content of time, because you can have prepositions that indicate time, but that doesn't make it a verb. Its ability to be a verb is that it can shift between times. So here, swim and swam, present tense and past tense. English only has 2 pure tenses, present and past. All other tenses are made with auxiliary verbs. So it's present tense swim and it's past tense swam. And also English doesn't use the term conjugate for its verbs because we only have one way that a verb can change in the present tense. So we call it inflection. So a verb inflects for the third person. And this is just vocabulary. And now here we have some tenseless forms. Technically, their grammar is not verb, but their concept, their idea is verb. So they're a hybrid. This perfect participle or past participle, I prefer the term passive participle because we use this participle to form the passive voice. And the present or active participle, swimming, I prefer active participle, but it's not a common term. Also, we have the infinitive. This is a neutral, infinite meaning without time. This is the purest form of a verb with all time idea stripped away from it. However, it can function to be the future participle. One of its functions is future time. but it's not its most basic. Its most basic is timeless. So if I say something like, I have chores to do, that to do functions as a future time, but it's still a participle. It's aspect, not tense, if that makes sense. All right, so we've got these three: present, past, and present third person that we can divide into pure verbs. And the verb phrase. Here's my verb phrase equation. It's going to be tense, and actually later I'll add modal verbs into here as well. And this have phrase and be phrase are inside between the tense and the head verb. Because the modal verbs and the auxiliary verbs are going to attract the tense into them. So the tense goes at the beginning, just like a determiner. All right, so the verb phrase for today, we're just going to focus on tense and head verb. The head verb determines the quality over the content of the verb. There are three basic categories of the verb, which are linking verbs, intransitive verbs, and transitive verbs. I'm sure you're familiar with those terms as well from Spanish.
Yes.
All right, so we're just going to take a brief look at those. Linking verbs form an equation between subject and complement. For example, Eric is my son is a linking verb. This soup is hot. The air feels dry. These sense words that tell me how I know this fact, those are also linking verb. Feels, smells, sounds. Seems, exactly. Then we have intransitive. We have one basic form of the intransitive. It has no need of an object. So I can put an object, but without an object, it still functions grammatically. For example, Maria slept, my dog runs, the people are smiling. These have no need of an object to form a complete thought. However, the transitive verbs, which we have 4 different transitive patterns in English, these must have an object in order to make any sense. For example, she gave him a hug. If I take away any of these words, gave doesn't make sense. So I have she gave a hug. Well, to whom? She gave him what? We need to have, in this case, for gave, both.
Give me a moment. Give me a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just found a radio on and I don't know what that means.
Oh.
Maybe it was my kid playing with. Sorry, this.
Oh, don't worry, no problem. All right.
Yeah.
So transitive, transitive has to have an object. Without the object, it can't function in a clause. So last one, I saw the parade. I saw alone doesn't really work. But we can change the verb if I don't have an object. For example, I see. This is a transitive, intransitive verb. It doesn't need an object. But I stared or I looked. These don't need objects. So in English, possibly like Spanish, there are 2 or 3 different verbs that mean the same thing. Their difference is grammar. Does it need an object? Does it not need an object? All right, so English has only 2 simple tenses, as we discussed, the present and the past. Verbs do have voice, passive and active, just like Spanish. The verbs have mood, indicative, subjunctive, and imperative. And the verbs inflect, they do not conjugate. So some verb tenses have a unique verb form for the inflection. This is basically our equivalent of an irregular verb. So from the base verb be, we get past tense were or was, and it doesn't look a thing like its base verb. Most verbs are going to look like their base verbs, but these do not. Have goes to had, eats to ate, buy to bought, etc., etc. So you want to be particularly focused on making sure that you've memorized at least your past participles, which are the most irregular. There are only two irregular verbs in English, which is be and have. They're the only ones that are irregular in their present tense. Okay. Others are formed with auxiliaries. So if I want the future tense, I need the modal verb will. If I want to make a perfect tense, I need the auxiliary verb have, or present progressive is plus the ing participle. I look at these as verb plus adjective, but their technical grammatical sense is a verb phrase. And then finally, auxiliaries are going to attract tense. This is both modals and auxiliaries. The modal verb is going to attract the tense before the auxiliary verb is. So if there is a modal like can, that's going to take the tense. Your verb isn't going to take the tense. So can buy or could buy, could means past. I'm not going to say can bought because can means present time. Okay, are we going too fast or too slow?
No, I think it's like a review.
It's a review. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get the big picture of how English uses its grammar to form its phrases.
Yeah.
So here, subject and predicate, again, terms you're familiar with, but we're going to see how they function together. So in our subjects, we've got only noun phrases. Sam,
So
the dogs, 12
I
angry
have
men.
a doubt. I have a doubt in the slide before.
Yeah.
So when we are in the auxiliaries attract tense. Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah. So it's okay. Now I see that.
Okay.
I didn't get that.
If you look up at the top in this equation, the
Sí.
tense is closest to the modal. So sometimes there isn't an option for a modal to have a past tense. In that case, it's going to go to the auxiliary. But if there is a past option, it's going to want to be in that modal verb.
Got it.
Okay. All right, so our options here in subject, Sam, the dogs, 12 angry men, these all function as complete noun phrases with the determiner and the head word. And the predicate is going to be functioned with its base verb plus tense. So cried, are sleeping, fell off the boat. One more thing that is both for nouns and verbs is they have person, how many, the number. So just like Spanish, singular, plural, that's all we got. So let's try with Sam. Let's see how many of these predicates Sam can work with. So starting with Sam cried. How about Sam are sleeping? Does that work?
No, because it's a plural.
Exactly, it's a plural. Sam fell off the boat, a boat.
No, because it's a present without S.
This one works actually. Sam fell off a boat. In the past tense, in all verbs except for our irregular be and have, past tense is all the same for all numbers.
Fell is past. Okay.
Fell is past.
Yeah, sí, claro. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's why we're doing it. Sí. So Sam fell off a boat. Sam was in my house.
In my shoe?
Oh, in my shoe.
I guess yes.
Shoe.
He was in your shoe. I don't know.
He was in your shoe. Okay. Well, for 4 it works. The hairy spider was in my shoe. Sam says nothing.
It's okay because it's the third form person.
Good. Sam, give me chills.
No, because we'll need the S form or be in a past. So
perfect. Yeah, right. If I said Sam gave me chills, this would be okay.
Yeah.
All right, the dogs. The dogs cried.
Yeah.
Yep. The dogs are sleeping.
Yes.
Mhm. The dogs fell off a boat.
Yes.
And so I think you get the sense of this, a verb agreement with the head word in the subject,
Yes.
same as Spanish. So this is just a
Sí.
review, but this is how we think of it. When we look at a sentence, in order to check that it's correct, we're going to separate the subject and the predicate. First thing we're going to do is, does the subject match the verb? Then we're going to look just at the noun phrase, make sure the noun phrase is correct, then just at the verb phrase, make sure the verb phrase is correct. All right. So finishing up here on the verb phrase, cried, just like a determiner and a head word or head noun, we can separate the tense from the base verb. So the base verb is cry. The time is past, so it's cried. And this is an intransitive verb. We don't need any sort of an object. So we're not going to go through this whole list because it's mostly review for you. But you can go through it at any time. I posted the slideshow online.
Okay.
All right, adjectives. This is probably the hardest one of these four, and I'll show you why. Its definition is a word that can be made comparative, superlative, and can modify a noun. Because an adverb also can be made comparative or superlative, but it can't modify a noun. So I've got examples: silly, sillier, silliest, beautiful, more beautiful, and most beautiful. So looking at this word silly, remember last time we talked about syllables. And I said that the Y vowel only equals a 0.5 vowel. That's because I like this simple rule, greater or less than 2 syllables. If Y is only 0.5 vowel, then I can say anything less than 2 syllables can use ER or EST for its comparative or superlative. But if it has 2 syllables, oh, I can't think of an example right now. If it has 2 syllables or 3 syllables, like beautiful, I need more or most to make it comparative or superlative. The adjectives have 2 places. Yeah.
But there is the exception of good, better. There is a
Yes.
irregular too.
Good, better. Actually, more itself is an irregular adjective. Its superlative is most. So more and most are their own irregulars. Yes, there are far and further.
Yes.
And farther. Those are irregulars. So yes, there are irregular, but those can be made comparative or superlative still. But the most basic rules here is ER, EST, or more and most.
Yeah.
Adjectives have 2 main places in a phrase or sentence that they can go. Their most natural location is prior to the noun that it's commenting on. That's called the pre-noun slot.
Yeah.
It can also go after a linking verb in the complement slot. So between a noun and its determiner is pre-noun, and after linking is complement. And adjectives can form a chain. I can stack up my adjectives, but they have a very specific order which they must be in. And that's what we're going to look at next, because I'm going to give you the list. Oh, I guess we're not looking at that next. Here's just an example. Pre-noun, pre-noun, pre-noun goes between determiner and head noun. And complement goes after either a be verb or a linking verb. All right, so here are 10 different types of adjectives and the order in which they must go together. So this is, for example, between a determiner and a head noun. They have to go in chronological order. For example, I can't put origin before its shape. It has to go shape first and then origin. So could I have you read through all of these? It's a lot to read.
So opinion: unusual, lovely, beautiful, size, big, small, tall, physical quality, thin, raw, untidy,
Untidy, messy,
shape,
untidy.
untidy, shaped, round, square, rectangular, age, young or youthful, color, blue, red, pink, origin, Dutch, Japanese, Turkish, material, metal, wood, plastic, type, general purpose, for, side, U shape, purpose, cleaning, hammering, cooking.
Good. All right. You've encountered this before, right? This is probably one of the harder things to do as an ESL speaker is to correctly order adjectives. Honestly, I don't even know how English speakers know naturally how to do this. But somehow nine times out of 10, the English speaker will correctly say these words. How I look at it is abstract to concrete. The more abstract the idea, the more likely it's going to come first. The more concrete is going to come towards the end. And this is like forming an argument, right? We want our worst example up front, and we want to leave them with the best example of how we know our evidence. So that's like an adjective. You're giving evidence for this noun and how you know its quality. So putting the less provable, like unusual, will prove that it's unusual, right? That's kind of hard. But I can prove very easily that it's U-shaped. I can prove very easily that it came from Japan. So these are evidences that are going to be closer to the noun. All right, have you memorized all of these?
At some point in my life, but I don't honestly, I don't use more than two. I mean, I will never say 3 adjectives and a noun. It's really kind of weird.
Yeah. I'm in the unfortunate habit of stacking a lot of adjectives. So sometimes people look at me like, what are you talking about? But you know, it's 99% of the time you're going to have one adjective.
Yeah, in poetry or, oh yes, the big guy with, blue t-shirt or whatever. Yes. Yeah. And the truth is that I will not be thinking in this order. If it's in a conversation, I will just say actually I will use the opposite of the thinking. I will say the more evident first, just because what I want is that people make the connection where
exactly
what you want to talk.
Good. So we're just going to think about this in case you ever have 2 or in case you ever have 3. Don't worry about more than that.
Yeah. Okay.
If you just think abstract to concrete, you'll be fine. We're just going to look at these examples. We're not going to do much with them. Here's some sentences with a few adjectives stacked together. So could you read number 1?
It was made of a strange green metallic material.
Good. So how many adjectives do I have here?
1, 2, 3.
3, right. And are they in a pre-noun or a complement slot?
Pre-noun.
Pre-noun, because I've got that opens up my noun phrase. That's my street sign that says, hey, a noun is coming. And the next one is adjective, so I know keep going, keep going, keep going, and material is going to be my noun.
Material is the reference, so yes.
Exactly. So then I've got strange. Is that a concrete or an abstract idea?
Abstract.
Very abstract. Green.
Concrete, I would say.
It's kind of in between, right? Because green has a couple different shades, and someone might even argue. In fact, I had this argument with a student once where he says, my shirt isn't yellow, it's green. So color, linguistically, is kind of an abstract. So I like to call it subjective, not abstract, because someone can argue with me.
Yes,
but metallic. This is what it's made of.
That will be concrete because
it's very concrete. I can prove this scientifically.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Can you read the next one, number 2?
Yes. It's a long, narrow plastic brush.
Good. It's a long, narrow plastic brush. Long, narrow, and plastic are adjectives. Long is its length. Maybe to me, something is long, but to someone else, that's short. Maybe I'll say, oh, it's only 5 miles away. Someone else says, that's a long ways, but I'm thinking, oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
And narrow as well. I mean, I know my sister looks in the mirror and she says that she's getting too wide. And I say, no, I think I think you look fine. You're narrow, right? So it's subjective, not really abstract, but subjective.
And relative to depend with what are you comparing.
Exactly. So these you can think of the far ends being abstract and concrete, and in the middle you've got subjective and relative. All right. How about number 3?
She was a beautiful, tall, thin, young, black-haired Scottish woman.
Right. That's a lot of adjectives, right? How many?
6.
6, right. And they're all in the correct order. Somehow English speakers know naturally how to do this. My recommendation is just listen to how other people use their adjectives and put them in the same order as they do. It develops more naturally. It's harder to study it than it is to do it. But when you're writing an essay, you can have something like this where you can check, right? You can go back and check the quality of your adjectives. All right, number 4, last one.
What an amazing little old Chinese cup and saucer.
Good. Where is my noun phrase?
Cup and saucer.
Good. And where does it begin, the noun phrase?
The an and
Exactly.
amazing.
The un, right? That's my determiner. It's the open brackets, and the saucer head noun is the closed brackets. So inside I've got amazing little old Chinese 4 adjectives. Cup. Notice that Scottish and Chinese are capitalized. These are called proper adjectives. If memory serves, Spanish does not have proper adjectives. So we can use them as substantive adjectives, sustantivos, or just as adjectives together with a noun for its origin. So here, just to see 1, 6, and 8, green, you are right. This is a lot closer to concrete. 2 and 4, long and narrow, but then plastic is not abstract. It's very concrete. Beautiful, tall, thin, even young. These are all pretty abstract or subjective, but then black-haired and Scottish, this is more provable. Amazing, little, old, these are subjective, but Chinese, we can prove that. All right, almost our last one here, adverbs. Definition of an adverb is very similar to an adjective. It is a word which can be made comparative or superlative and can modify a verb or an adjective. In my hierarchy, I've got the verb at the top, and I've got noun and adjective, where an adjective can interact with the noun. And I've got an adverb, which can interact with the verb or the adjective. But an adverb cannot interact with a noun. They're not friends. All right, so my example is soon, sooner, soonest, rapidly, more rapidly, and most rapidly. All right, can be formed from an adjective by adding the derivational suffix ly. Technically, this isn't an inflection, it's a suffix because it's a morpheme that comes from the word like. So for example, it's rapid like, it's rapidly. So it's a derivation of the word like. It is the most flexible part of speech, right? I showed you very specific places that adjectives have to go, even based on their content. Nouns and verbs have a formula. You can't make a formula for adverbs. They're too flexible. So these can go in many different locations depending on your emphasis. However, their most natural placement is right before the verb phrase. So they like to come between the subject and the predicate, attached to the predicate. That's the natural place. Some of them break that rule. Some of them can just go anywhere and it really doesn't matter, but emphasis is going to be key. And usually an adverb answers the question when, where, why, or how. We're almost done here. We got 8 minutes. You okay? All right. So like I said, it's the most flexible. its natural slot is immediately before the verb phrase. So this sentence, Mario suddenly hit the brakes. That's neutral. There is no emphasis here. But if I say Mario hit the brakes suddenly, then the speed with which he hit those brakes is my emphasis, because in English, we pack the emphasis onto the end of the sentence. Whereas here, I say suddenly Mario hit the brakes. Suddenly is actually brought down a notch. It's not as emphatic. Suddenly Mario hit the brakes. Hitting the brakes is the emphasis here. And I don't want to detract from it with a very loud word like suddenly.
Yeah, suddenly in the last will be more like a connector, like there was having something action and then suddenly connect with what's happening.
Exactly. It's connecting it to what happened before. And I don't think in this class we're going to get to the pre-noun or pre-sentence adverbs, because these do serve a very specific function in delivering information. We might touch on it later, but it sounds like you already have that idea of how it connects to the previous thought. So I think that might be unnecessary for us.
In Spanish, we can also use subordinates. I was reading my book when something happens. So that is we call
subordinate clause.
Subordinate.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to use it exactly the same in English. So you'll be very familiar with that when we get to sentence grammar next time. But there are some places where an adverb can't function, especially when we get to frequency adverbs, the time at which something happens or the frequency with which it happens. Those have pretty strict rules, but these don't, or these do. Mario speaks passionately. This is fine. Mario passionately speaks. This is fine, but passionately Mario speaks. It's not incorrect, but it sounds very awkward, right? It sounds Shakespearean. It's weird.
Yeah, could be a poet trying to do something weird.
Right, and poetry has a lot more ability to break these rules. In prose, we've got to keep to these rules, especially when writing essays.
Yeah, like Yoda is speaking in his.
Exactly, like when Yoda is speaking. All right, so in our last 5 minutes, we're just going to do a quick thing about prepositions, because these are best friends with noun phrases. They love noun phrases. A preposition is a word which shows direction or time and cannot change form through inflection. So I can't build on these words in the way that I use nouns and verbs. And that's just because it's a closed class verb, closed class noun word. So a prepositional phrase, P plus noun phrase, is a noun. The noun phrase has to be in the objective case, not the subjective case. So a noun or a prepositional phrase always is a preposition plus a noun phrase. And this noun phrase can be any quality, including a substantive adjective. So we've got to be careful. Sometimes it will look like an adjective, but it's functioning like a noun after that preposition. The preposition is like a magic potion. It turns anything after it into a noun. A prepositional phrase serves as an adjectival or an adverbial phrase. So now I've got prepositions together with nouns make adjective or adverb sense. So we're going to look at a couple sentences and see, is this prepositional phrase functioning as an adjective or functioning as an adverb? Do I put it together with the subject or do I put it together with the verb? All right, first couple prepositional phrases here. Across the street, across plus noun phrase. After their long trip, after plus noun phrase, etc., for the party. In the forest. So let's look at some sentences using these and pay attention to the placement of this noun phrase. Can you read example number 1 under across the hall?
The dog ran across the street. The man across the street bought a new car.
Right. So in number one, the dog ran across the street. Where is my subject and verb?
It's complementing the, I will say the verb, because it's running across. So it's explaining you running how is across.
Right.
But in the other is the man across the street is telling you the position of the man. So
very good. This is actually, we can make this prepositional phrase part of the noun phrase, but it's a post-noun modifier, meaning after the noun, I can modify that word man with another phrase. So the man across, if it comes close to that noun phrase, it's going to want to modify that noun phrase. It comes before the verb, so we're going to keep that subject separate from the predicate. The predicate in the first one, the dog ran across the street. Here, the prepositional phrase is closer to the predicate, so it likes to go backwards. In the forest, can you read that one?
The kids in the forest slept. The kid slept in the forest. Yeah,
Right.
it's different too.
It's different. And it has the same kind of meaning, but it just, it's whether or not we're emphasizing details about the kids or emphasizing details about the verb, right? So the kids in the forest, that tells me which kids, not the kids at home slept. But the kids slept in the forest, this has the sense of all of the kids in our subject. So if I'm talking about a group of kids and I want to tell you that part of them went to the forest and slept, while the others stayed home awake, then I would say the kids in the forest slept. Whereas if I have a party and they all go to the woods together, I say the kids slept in the forest. So there's a lot of contextual information that changes based on what I choose to modify, whether I'm focused on the kids and restricting that noun down to a group, or if I'm focused on the verb and restricting that down to time and location. All right, here's just dividing everything into its phrase. The dog ran across the street. It's functioning adverbially. And this one functions adjectivally because the man across the street is one noun phrase controlled by the head word noun or man. All right, we're at 3 o'clock, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. If you had time to do any of the exercises from Tuesday, you can ask me about any of them. I trust that you're able to do those pretty well. So if you're very confident, we don't have to go over those. It's for your practice. But if you have any questions, you can ask me any questions now or next time.
So what will be the exercise that I need to do here? Identify when it's adjective or...
So in here, I want you to separate subject from predicate, and then look in the subject and tell me what's the determiner and what's the head noun. And then in the verb, tell me what is the verb and what is the tense.
Okay, so separate subject from predicate and then?
And then for the noun phrase, the subject, what is the determiner and what is the head noun?
Okay.
And in the verb, what is the base verb and what is the tense?
Okay.
All right. How are you feeling?
Good.
It was a big review today.
Yeah. It's warming up.
Warming up. And we're not going to do grammar every time. We're going to do maybe every other time. We'll do a bit of grammar, and there's only 3 grammar lessons. So the majority of our time is going to be spent writing and looking at your writing and other essays as well, so that we can make the best of our 12 classes.
Okay. So for April 15, would you like that I write an essay with one of the expression and opinion, or I just choose one?
You choose, because we're going to do another expression and another opinion. This is just your practice, your warm up, and so that I can see your writing style.
Yeah. Okay, how long?
5 paragraphs, 4 to 6 sentences per paragraph.
Okay.
So try to keep it under 30 sentences, but at least more than 20 sentences.
Okay,
That-
got it.
Yeah, that should be about a page if it's double spaced.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Feel good?
Sí. Thank you very
Right.
much.
Qué bueno.
Gracias, and have a good trip. I think you have also a trip.
Yeah, we leave tomorrow.
Okay.
So-
Enjoy your happy Easter too.
Thank you, you as well, and good luck on your missions trip. I'll be praying for you.
Thank you.